What is up, guys? It is Jay. Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be all about jigs, the trailers, what types of jigs, and jig heads. We're going to go into all the little nitty-gritty details, and I'm trying to make a one-stop shop for you guys to hit it in this video. I like to keep fishing simple, and you wouldn't believe how many blogs and all that fun stuff that I got to go research to find all this stuff. So if you haven't already, guys, like, subscribe, comment. If you really could, leave me a comment in this video. Tell me if you like this educational turn that I've done with my videos here. I am going to go out and still fish. I just haven't really been able to, guys. I've been, in my cast, and it's not easy, going out fishing. I have been out fishing. I've been catching fish still, and if you've been on Instagram, you've been seeing it, but it's been a couple of weeks since I posted a video. So I am going to start doing some of these educational videos. I think it'll be good. So yeah, like, subscribe, comment, and let's get into it, guys, all right? First thing we're going to start off with is this swim jig, okay? What is a swim jig? It sounds pretty basic, right? Has that archy style head there. You see that most swim jigs that I've noticed have, like, obviously a swim head that has the eyes and everything on it that make it look like a bait fish. That's pretty much the biggest, I think, component that makes a swim jig, other than the archy style head that swims right through grass. This is a grass hero jig. The biggest thing, another good thing you want to see it standing up like that too. That's how it's going to swim. When you pull it through, it's going to cut right through that grass. This isn't ideal for like hard rocky bottoms or like bottoms that have like logs and stuff like that, because this kind of head ideally can get stuck in between like a log, and therefore you're going to lose that. You don't want that. This is for those waters that have those grassy just patches that, right when you're swimming it through, and the bass will be right on that edge and they'll just eat it up. Another thing that I do want to point out too is this stout hook that comes on this thing. So I'll show you another one here that I have, just to show you with an example of the differences and how different jigs hooks can be. Look at the thickness there. She done tapped it there.
That was funny.
The thickness in those, and this other jig I have here is what we call a finesse jig, and I'll get into that one in a second, but just look at the difference in the hooks. All right, so that's a swim jig, guys, and I'll have other videos, and I'll go into more detailed videos about specific jigs. This one here, you're typically gonna want to trailer it with with some sort of, typically with a swim bait. A lot of people will pair up a jig with any kind of crawl or a bug, kind of bait, a grub. But swim jigs are meant more to be fished like a spinner bait or a buzz bait. So with these kinds of jigs specifically, I typically will pair them up with a swim bait. So there you go. All right, guys, moving on. We're going to move on to one of the popular ones right now in the fall. A lot of people are really in love with this kind, and honestly, it's becoming one of my favorites too. And, it's totally understandable why. I'm trying to look real quick to see if I have one. Let me look. This one right here. This is like my little handy-dandy, ready-to-go kind of thing. All right, so not that one. We'll get to that one in a minute. We're going to pull out this guy right here. So this is the football jig. Okay, I have a knot on there because I had it tied on. So football jig, guys, is obviously, and I have another one here somewhere that's, you can get a real good look at what the football head is really supposed to look like. I just have like an obsession with jigs, so therefore they're like everywhere at the moment because this is the video. Oh, there we go. All right, so take a look at that football head. And we'll get to this one in a second too. This is a football head as well, but this is a football finesse. And so a lot of people are wondering what that finesse word means, and we'll get there in a second, guys. But football jigs, man, these are good for those rocky bottoms, those things that, you want to get it a lot of attention, when it's going and it's bumping and it's just bop, bop, bop. And a lot of times you're going to want to, well, if the dang hook there didn't hook it, got it hooked on there. A lot of times you're going to want to trail it with a crawl trailer or a chunk of some sort. I got a good blue Ned bait on there. It's just a chunk right now. And actually, a lot of times, guys, do you check out your skirt there. This one looks like a little long there. It's hard to see the trailer there. So a lot of the times what you do is you come in, you just cut a little bit off, and that way it gives it this more, so this is one that has like a little, gives it that pop look. It's a shorter look with the skirt. Those look good too. A lot of people cut their skirts. I'm still getting into that, still getting used to it. I tell you what though, I'm obsessed with jigs. I think that's one thing I'm definitely obsessed with. What you doing, Chief?
Moving closer. Sorry, guys.
No worries. But yes, so football jigs. This football jig. So again, you want to, biggest thing is, you know, you have that stout hook. This is gonna be one of those. You get it in the bottom, the rocky bottoms. It's a good fall. It's a good fall bait. You get in there. I'm trying to think. Sorry, guys. I'm being as raw as it is. I don't have a script in front of me. I do have a couple of things on my phone I can look to. I love the football jig because ideally that bottom, you know, you can have some football jigs, they don't sit, it sits flat, you know, it doesn't sit up on itself, but it goes through and it bumps up and it gets a lot of attention under the water. Ideally too, when it bumps up, you'll hear some noise with that rock when it bumps the bottom. So anyway, guys, I know. We're moving on. Finesse jigs. I said we were going to get to finesse jig. Finesse jig, guys. A finesse jig is basically a small profile. That's, I mean, a lot of people are going to have some difference maybe of their own definition of it, but with all the research I've done, the basic definition of a finesse jig is a smaller profile. I have some over here, and when I say smaller profile, typically I mean like a lighter weight and everything. This is 1/4 of an ounce, I believe. Let me see. Yeah, 1/4 of an ounce, 1/4 of an ounce. This one's 1/4 of an ounce. Now, typically on your regular, just basic finesse jig, you're actually gonna have more of that ball head. This is an archy style type head. So this one's gonna be good for, you know, getting through just about everything. It's kind of a go-to, which is the next one we'll actually get to too, is what we'll get to with that one. But this, the smaller profile, and usually, just for a reference real quick on the head that you'll usually see on a standard finesse jig, is gonna be just that round ball head. Small, finesse. That's what you look for with a finesse jig, is a smaller profile, typically a smaller weight as well. They're good for shallow waters, harder fishing. I've heard that those are good for when you're not quite sure about the worm bite. You kind of have a worm bite, but you want something a little bit bigger. Bump it up to a finesse, you get a bigger profile, you get that skirt going in the water, and it just gets that reaction bite out of a bass. And that's what you're really looking for. And we'll get the colors and we'll get the trailers and everything too, guys. I'm gonna cover it all. I've done so much research. I've had to go to so many different resources to find this information, and like, I just want you to go to one place, and hopefully this is some decent information for you guys. Please let me know in the comments. Check me out on Instagram too, guys. I post a lot of pictures of my jigs on there because I'm like fascinated with them. All right, so we've covered swim jigs, football jigs, finesse jigs, and we're gonna go to a casting jig. What is a casting jig? Every video I watched was all like, what is a casting jig? And still to like the moment, I'm in the best way to define a casting jig. The best way to define a casting jig is go-to jig. Meaning like that's what you're gonna wanna start with. If you've never really fished with a jig, generally speaking, you're gonna start with a casting jig. And I don't know how you explain that. A casting jig is gonna be, now let me just double check to make sure I'm 100% like right on this one with this casting jig. Because like, let me tell you guys, there's just been a lot with that one. Yeah, okay, I'll make sure I was right. So, this one is defined as a finesse jig. Yeah, we're not going to use that one. We're going to use, that's still a little small. Okay, well, see, this is the one thing, guys, I don't have, oh, I'm like looking, no, this is a flipping jig. Can't use that one because I'm using that one next. Ow. All right. We'll use this one. It's a finesse jig too, guys. It's very similar to the one I just showed you guys on the smaller. It's a finesse casting, which is kind of like how that one that I just showed you, this one here, is a finesse casting. So what makes a casting jig a casting jig? That archy style head. That archy style head, it's not as pointed as a swim jig head. Typically, swim jig heads are going to be more pointed at the front, like that bait face. I don't know how to explain that. It comes at a point. The archy style head is like kind of at an angle, but with a rounded point to it. I don't know if that makes sense. Whoa. She loves getting up close and personal, guys. But so that's the biggest thing. And then it has the stout hook with it as well. It does not have the finesse hook. So basically you're looking at the archy style head with a hook set that's similar to the swim. So you're looking at something like that with that style head. Okay? So that's what a casting jig is. You're looking at something typically around the 3/8 to a 1/2 ounce. And I know I haven't really said much about weights because weights do make a difference, but at the same time, with tungsten being a factor now, guys, it's all about profile. So with a finesse jig, you do typically go on the lighter end of weights, and then as you get more into what we're gonna get to next, like if you start getting into the swim jigs, they're like 1/2 ounce, 3/8 of an ounce. You're looking at 3/8 of an ounce to 1/2 ounce typically anyway, just depending on what kind of water you're fishing. And if you're fishing the bottom more with like the football heads, you're looking at more of a 1/2 ounce, okay? So with a casting jig, the typical one is a 3/8 to a 1/2 ounce. That is the go-to weights. It is the go-to jig. A casting jig is what I define as a go-to jig. Does that make sense? Kind of, sort of? No? Okay, so the good definition on a video that I heard, sorry, it just kind of clicked. It's good at everything, but it's not the best at one thing. Does that make sense? Okay, so it's good for covering grass. It's good for covering brush piles. It's good for covering rocks and bottoms. You can even try to swim it a little bit. It's not the best at swimming, like through the grass, but it can. So it's not really the best at anything, but it's good at everything.
It's not specific.
Right. It's kind of like the best way I look at a casting jig, like when you're playing like Tekken, and I don't know if anybody knows what that is, like Tekken or a baseball game or something like that. You're picking a player, right? You want a player that's a little bit good at everything. That's what the casting jig is. It's just not, it doesn't have one specialty, but it's like pretty much overall good. Good definition? Okay. So that's what as a casting jig is like a go-to. A lot of people fish with a casting jig and don't even know it. Moving on. We're going to move on to the flipping jig. So what is a flipping jig? And a lot of people call this a pitching jig. Flipping and pitching are pretty much the same thing. Pitching is more of a style of how you fish the flipping jig. And a lot of people just get it mixed up. So check it out. Stout hook on that bad boy. So it's a good thick one. So this one is a 1/2 ounce. It's PB&J, and you check out the style.
PB and you?
Yep, PB and me. My name's Jay. All right, so check that out. You see how it sits? Now, just imagine it underwater. That skirt would be floating all around, and you got everything just kind of. But it's not an archy style. Okay, so what makes a flipping jig different? So this one, guys, is going to be more on your heavier duty, underneath that tough brush, hard stuff to pull out, stout jig. This is going to be that jig that when you come up on some water and you see just nothing but like sticks and stuff, and you look down and you're not really sure what's under there because there's a lot of logs and stuff. The flipping jig is what it is. This is a stout one. This is going to pull through all that stuff better than any other jig. That head is like, it's almost like they took the archy or something and they kind of just flattened it a little bit and made it a little bit not pointed for the football, and it's just kind of rounded. And they came up with the flipping jig. It's not going to be a finesse hook, you're gonna have a stout hook. It's not gonna, you need a strong hook. So if you get that fish and you get him under a brush pile, your hook won't bend out. A lot of people, you see this weed guard, a lot of people will cut their weed guard a little bit more so it lines up better with their hook there. I haven't really ventured down that alley yet, but I'm not against it. Some weed guards can be pretty long. But that is the basic definition of a flipping jig. It is the stout one. This is more of the heavier ones. This is when you start getting into half, 3/4 of an ounce, up to an ounce. Stout. Make sense? This is, I keep asking her in the background because she's new to fishing, so I want to make sure that I explain it enough that you get it. You know what I mean? Because I've had to watch.
Well, I have a question.
Sure. I want to answer questions too.
On any of the jigs.
Mm-hmm.
The weed guard.
Yes.
I don't understand. Like.
Okay. So what do you mean?
I don't understand what the point of it is. Is it supposed to
It
cover
makes
the
it
hook?
weedless.
How?
So when it's going through the water, that's a good question. So, I mean, because if you look at it, you're like, I don't understand. It doesn't go here.
Right.
So it doesn't make it weedless. And sometimes you have to see, there's like a basic bend right there for it to even be like that. And you'll see on some, they're a little bit closer.
Yeah, notice.
And then some, which we haven't even gotten here yet, don't have any at all. We'll get to that one next. And then you have some that are literally like on the hook. Okay?
That makes more sense to me.
This is actually going to have a less hookup ratio than you think because of how tough the fish has to get through that. So I know that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but this is a finesse setup too, and this is a cheaper hook that's on there because this is one of those.
So it's harder to set the hook in a fish's mouth on that one because of the weed guard?
Part of it because the fish, so I know that doesn't seem to always make sense, but like the fish has a harder time with the weed guard being there to actually hook up with the hookup ratio is less because the hook's exposure. Because the fish is going to come in this way.
Right.
Like that, right? Look, I even hooked myself a little doing that.
Oh.
So when you're coming through the water, you're pulling it this way, right? The weeds are hitting this. And it's
And
stout
pushing it down.
and pushing it down.
I see.
So it stays weedless, okay? But when you're having a fish that comes in, it's easier for them to bite it. I can't, the mathematics and
sense.
the, stuff behind it I can't explain, but that's just what I've thought, all the research I've done. And now, a lot of the times, that's why I say they will take this. This one's a little long, so like to be using this one as an example is kind of a lot of the times they will take it and they will cut it just a smidge. Like I'm talking tiniest bit off the top there and have it more line up here. And they say their hookup ratio is better.
So that they're not biting that part of the weed guard that goes over the hook,
It actually lines up with it. But the one that stays on this, see, like it's not like it's terribly made or anything like that. But like, I mean, this here is actually going to have more, not be as weedless because of how it's just, it has a better chance of catching weeds rather than the hookup ratio. So like this has a better chance of catching weeds because of how close it is to the hook. Because if you're going through and you're pushing through and you get some kind of big anything,
it's going to push
it's
it down.
going to push it down. So you see that? It goes right through.
Okay.
So rather than, I guess hookup ratio maybe wasn't the right explanation there. All right, moving on. We were on flipping jigs, stout, heavier jigs. You start getting into the heavier weights. Now, we're going to move on to bladed jigs. Now, a lot of people know the original chatterbait. That's where people have gone. That was what everybody knows. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to stick with that one just for the explanation. The good old chatterbait. It is a bladed jig, and it is still considered a jig, guys. Again, I would swim this one very similar to that of a spinnerbait again, and a buzzbait. The way it moves in the water, you feel that chatter right here, that blade, you want to tie it up right there, and when you're pulling it in, you're doing it like a spinnerbait, you feel that blade just in the water. You have that archy, kind of the archy style head that's on these things here. And when it comes to a profile as far as what you want to trail it with, what I've always been told and what I've learned is when you're going with a lighter profile and you're doing matching the hatch kind of thing, go ahead and do it with a swim bait. Okay? But the exception, I've been doing research and I've heard, is that if you're doing a darker profile, something like this, a natural or a darker profile, it's not bad to trail it with a crawl and it will be good and it'll look good. Okay? So, chatterbait's versatile when it comes to trailers. I've done it with the swim bait. Dude Buddy does it with a swim bait. He catches them all the time. Chatterbaits are, it's like a hit or miss with some people. A lot of people make a killing off of these things. I've seen people in videos just killing it left and right and this and that and all that. And then you have people like me who have just had a really tough time getting to know them still. So I really like the chatterbait. And
So a chatterbait is a jig.
it is a bladed jig.
It's a
and so
bladed
let me
jig.
use
Okay.
that term, and I'm sorry, I will take back every time you've heard me say chatterbait, insert bladed jig. Okay, so me and bladed jigs have a tough relationship right now, but I love it. It's a jig, and that's why I like it. It is considered a bladed swim jig.
Is that when I went out fishing with you the first time? That's the first thing I used.
That is the first thing she's
That's
ever
what I thought you
fished
were doing.
on.
Yeah.
And you remember the whoop, whoop, whoop
I
in the
remember
water,
being-
and she didn't
yeah,
know how
I
it
didn't
felt.
understand.
She was like, I don't know, that's weird. So
But is that what Cam uses a lot?
this is what this is
swears
what
by 'em?
he gets it on. He swears by this.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do, and that's a big reason why I'm not going to give up on it, because I've seen what it can do, and I really want to get that relationship well with this one. I've done research on it, and I've heard to don't fish it like a spinner bait. Maybe that's where the problem is. Fish it like a regular jig. But I've tried that too, and the whole point is to get that blade going. So one thing you want to look for too, guys, and this is why Z-Man, right? Hold on. That's terrible. Yeah, Z-Man. Sorry, guys. Whoa. My brain went out because I was thinking the chatterbait. So yes, Z-Man, when you are looking at your blades, a lot of times you'll see something, a swivel or something else that connects between the tie-on and the blade. I've been told that affects the speed of how quick that blade comes back to life. If your jig, you're swimming it and then you decide you're like burn, pause, and you let it sit, right? And then when you decide to come back up again, you want that blade to get as much action as quick as it can. You don't want it to pause on it while you're coming back up and then take a second to finally start, get going. You want it to get it as quick going as you can. So, supposedly, the less you have, here, and you have this in contact directly with that blade, supposedly, the quicker the blade's gonna pick up. So, that is why the chatterbait, the original chatterbait, the Z-Man has created, the bladed bait that they have created has been the one across the board. They have multiple versions of this now. This is the original. And of course, everybody now has their versions of bladed jigs. And there are a lot of good ones out there, guys. This is just, you can't beat the original. So, moving on, we are going to go into some hybrids now. What do I mean by hybrids? So this is where I got really confused, and I was like, oh gosh, I have to make a video because people are going to be like, I didn't understand, so there's got to be a lot of other people trying to figure it out too. So let's go into some hybrids. What I mean by hybrids is when someone says, okay, there's a football finesse jig. What does that mean? And now that I've explained to you what finesse means, and I've explained what football is, maybe it's easier to put it together. But I do have an example here of what a football finesse is somewhere in here. All right. Here's my football finesse. So, we'll just keep it simple, guys. Has that football head. Very, very football-like, okay? And then finesse. It is a smaller hook, okay? And we'll just for example, we'll go ahead and we'll show you the difference again. You see, she really likes the close-up details, guys. Keeping it raw, keeping it real. I don't do the edit. I mean, I do the edits, and I'm not going to edit that out.
I'm literally watching
through the
watching
video.
the video, so every time I go to zoom
screen.
in, I'm not seeing how close I am to
Yeah, GoPros don't zoom in, so she's the zoom in. So, can you see the difference in the thickness there? Okay,
not terribly, but
there's
it's hard to see. I can see it.
You can see it in person. Yeah.
Trying to get a good shot of it. You can kind of see it,
I don't
but
think anything else has a thicker hook on it. Ah, there we go. Those might be better. It just has the... But it has a
Hard to
smaller
focus
hook, okay?
'Kay.
So, football finesse. It is a football jig
smaller profile.
with a smaller profile. It's that simple. But people don't understand that. So people are like, I mean, so it's like, after it was explained to me, it was kind of like, well, duh, okay, I get it. You're not going to really run into a finesse, I don't think, anyway. Now, this could just be wrong. So correct me if I'm wrong. Put it in the comments. Let me know if I'm wrong here. But just by the research I've done, you're really not going to find a finesse flipping jig. Because in the research I've seen, finesse means a smaller profile. You're typically in the shallows. You're not doing a whole lot of deep fishing. You're shallow fishing more with a finesse jig. And with a flipping jig, it's the exact opposite. So you can't really have both in one. Those are literally opposites. So like you're not going to find that as a hybrid. Let me think of another. I know there's other hybrids, and I knew I had another one to think of, but like it's kind of slipping my mind at the moment. You're coming into a lot of people like that are using tungsten too, so like you can go a little bit heavier with tungsten, but still have a smaller profile. So like, I'm trying to think of a good way to explain that. I mean, maybe in that essence, maybe that's how you could have like a finesse kind of flipping jig, but I'm not quite sure about that one, guys. I haven't been able to find any kind of research on that. I know that a lot of guys, a lot of brands have what they call a finesse jig. So this, for example, this is Guggenbait's. Little Juicy. I got a bunch of these things because this thing has just killed it for me. This season, I have just been tearing it up. I've been taking just left and right with these jigs. This one's more specifically than this one with this orange, what they call their bluegill finish. So this one, guys, is called a Lil Juicy finesse jig. Okay, they do have a juicy jig as well. So their finesse jig. Okay. But their head on theirs is not that round head at all. It's more of an archy. I guess that's what they would call their archy style, is what they're classifying their archy style. So I would actually classify this more of kind of like a finesse casting jig, which is also kind of, you know, a conundrum on its words because casting jigs are kind of what you throw out there. But it can be basically a smaller profile go-to. It does everything. It could do a little bit of everything. Like I said, I've killed it on it. So, you know, you got a lot of confusing things out there. But if you know the basics, then it's real easy to start understanding the hybrids. And what kind of hybrids you can have and what kind you can't have. Okay? So, moving on, we're going to go to... Do you have any questions, anything... or anything? I'm trying to make sure I want to cover everything for the most part. Moving on, we're going to go to trailers now. So, it's real simple. Trailers are pretty much a grub of some sort, maybe. A crawl of some sort. Okay? Of course, I didn't grab any. I kind of have a little one, but that's not... Alright, we'll use these, that's fine. And we'll use this one here too, just to show a swim bait of some sort, guys. Okay? Got this too. Swim baits. Okay? Keep it simple. Those are the sizes are gonna matter on this profile that you're going for, okay? Because just for example, these are literally like the same exact bait, but in two different sizes, okay?
It's a baby.
Yeah, it's a little one. You're going for a bigger profile. You got the more stout hook. It's obviously gonna have more girth to it. You're gonna have a heavier profile, a bigger profile, a bigger, you know, goes with the bigger profile. You put this, I had this, what did I have this on? I had this on this one here. So this was a finesse, the smaller profile. Just kind of, you know, think about that. And a lot of the times, guys, when you're thinking about crawls, you can get a lot of things. So this is one of my favorite trailers I'm falling more and more in love with. What?
Are those ones that I found?
Yeah, the ones that were on sale. But it's the style of bait that it is. So it's a chunk. What I love about chunks, guys, let me see, we'll do it right. Why a chunk, huh? So a chunk has these big, flopping crawl claws. There we go. And that to me makes all the difference when you take something else. We'll take a regular crawl here. Yeah, let's do that. Just to show you the difference in what I mean, okay? And this is a decent example to show you compared to, because these guys have some good flopping crawl legs too. Okay, I like these as a trailer as well. And when I'm talking about flopping, that's what I always look for a trailer, is big crawl claws. Okay, so those, and just see how, like, I can break these apart. These get a lot of action. These 10,000 fish, they have claws too, okay? That's another one. Those are the things I look for, guys, are those claws. Okay? Now, the difference between a crawl and a chunk is all about size profile. See the difference? A lot of the times people will take this segment out right here or another, and you basically got a chunk if you're taking that out, you know? So, it all depends on...
Shadow.
All depends on, you know, preference. Okay? All depends on action. Some people want a slower action, so they'll do another different kind of crawl that has like a tighter... I don't have any examples of the crawls that I'm talking about, but they have like a more bug, skinnier kind of movement. They don't make the same wavy movements that these make. Swim baits are totally awesome when you're pairing them up with a chatterbait or you're pairing them up with a swim jig. They go out, they flap around, they make that second, what was it that he said on the videos that I've watched? It's like the second I can't think of it, but it's like you have the first movement and then you have a second movement. It makes it more lifelike, okay? So when you're swimming it like a bait fish, which, by the way, guys, we're in the middle of fall right now. Those bass are feeding and they're going nuts. So a lot of people are using a lot of things that resemble bait fish. That's why a lot of people are killing it on the chatterbait right now, on the swim jigs. A lot of people are killing it on the spinner baits and all those things right now. Bait is like bait fish, big key thing. So the second movement, you have the first one and then you have that skirt. Something about having both those movements together when you're swimming them just gets that core reaction out of a bass and just makes them want to attack. Okay, so that's one of the big things about swim baits. But if you're using it as a regular jig, I highly advise crawls for your trailer, because when you're using a football jig, you're gonna be just having it at the bottom and it's gonna be moving and you're not gonna be swimming it. So you want that crawl action. You want those claws going and flopping in the water and everything like that, while this is moving in, the skirt's moving in the water, and you know, you're just sitting there at the bottom of the pond. So that's the big thing. Just think about what you're fishing and how you're fishing it. If you're doing it like a regular standard jig, whether it's a casting jig, a football jig, a finesse jig, a flipping jig, usually those you're gonna have some sort of crawl trailer. Chatterbaits, bladed jigs and swim jigs, they're kind of versatile with crawls or swim baits, but I use swim baits on those two types. It's all about preference. Try it. All you can do is go out there and try it and see how it works for you. I know there's something else that, yeah. So another thing we're gonna go to, I have a whole mess out here I gotta clean up now, but another thing we're gonna go to now, guys, are jig type heads. What do I mean by that? So this is all started, this like whole jig thing, and I got a picture that I like to reference because it's a good explanation, and I can't do it for the life of me by memory if I wanted to. So I have to go and check out this picture. Sorry, guys. Just to get it out of the way, because I know once I say it once, I won't have to say it again. All right, so we're dealing with round, offset, shaky heads, swim, and flipping. People are going to be like, what? All right. And I can actually, I think I'm able to show you just about all of them. So a round jig head, so I have a picture that I'm showing. I don't want to show you the picture, but it doesn't matter. Not to be rude, but it's got, you know, other people's information. Okay, so a round jig head is going to be, you see me blocking this thing in my hand? Like you can't see this piece, okay? A round jig head looks something very similar to this, but without that. And it's going to typically have a barb here on this part of the hook as well. I do not have one of those to show you, okay? But that is what a round jig head is. And of course, a jig head being the head of it, you know what I mean? That's duh. This is also a type of jig head with the little thing here, is a shaky head. What is a shaky head? Shaky head is when you basically take a swim bait, or, I mean, usually a swim bait, but I mean, you can use all kinds of baits on a shaky head. You can use a Ned rig, you can use all kinds of stuff on this. But you twist it on there like a little corkscrew, and it ties in, and it just goes to the bottom, and you do it like a jig. You fish it very similar to just a casting jig kind of thing. It has that round head on it, and just overall go-to kind of good thing. I have one. I don't even have any more of these because I fished the whole pack of them. But these are really cool. I like these a lot. This right here is called an offset. And I got two different here, two different ones. And the other one is an offset as well, but it's a swim type jig offset head.
Cardi B's ex-husband is in that bag?
I didn't.
Cardi B's ex-husband's name was Offset.
Oh, no, I did not know that. These things I do not know. All right, this is a big one. People are going to be like, dang. All right, so this is what they call an offset. So clearly you can see why it's called the offset, right? It is basically an EWG hook with a jig head on it. That's all it is, guys. I mean, you can fish it like a Texas rig, and this round jig head is going to get down into like what the shaky heads can get into, what those finesse and just any of those round headed jigs can really get into. It's not going to really get caught anywhere. It's an offset. This little part's called the offset. This one is also an offset. Let me see. But it has a more archy style. Hold on, what if I can just do one? There we go. So it has more of that point, not archy even. It's really pointed. It's more like a swim jig head, but it's not a swim jig because you don't see the eyes or anything like that. But it's very pointed. It's also an offset style. So, and then what were the other ones? I showed you the shaky head, and then, see, this is what I said, my memory is just not good. Then you have a flipping and a swim head. And I've shown you those. And the heads, guys, like I've said, and I don't have one that's not a jig. I don't have just the head. And I'm getting some, but a swim jig head is one that has the eyes. It has that archy but more pointed type head that's going to cut through grass. But it doesn't have the skirt. It's literally just the head and the hook. You don't even necessarily have the weed gar. Okay? That's a plus if you do. Okay? And then the other one is this one, the flipping jig. So it's basically the same thing as the flipping head, jig head. It's basically the same thing, but without the skirt. It does typically come with the weed guard because it's meant to be fished in that heavier brush kind of style. It's meant to be on that, you know, stout kind of way. So It's literally the same thing, but without the skirt. You get the weedless and everything. All right, last but not least, guys, we're gonna cover our colors. Keep it simple. That's, well, you know, when I'm talking about colors, something natural, something dark, something white, and something bright. That's literally, those are my go-tos. By natural, I mean insert watermelon or pumpkin, green pumpkin, and choose your flavor of flake, color, whatever's working better in your waters. Some people do better with watermelon colors in certain parts of the country. Other people do better with green pumpkin. My parts of the woods, it's green pumpkin. People kill it in that color around here. Another one that I like a lot is black and blue flake. Duh, go figure. I feel like everybody probably just, everybody just knew I was gonna say that. It's the other go-to. The blue, like, a lot of people like to match them up. You like black and blue, somebody's gonna do a black and blue kind of trailer, okay? Guys, don't make that complicated. Honestly, mix it up. Sometimes, and these are just from the videos I've watched. And what I mean by bright, by the way, do something bright. Chartreuse, something white. Okay, white I like because, and the only reason the only reason I'm saying that is because if you can see, this is a small crack and crawl on there, and it's just beat. I don't know if y'all can tell, it's off and discolored, and because this right here was just what killed it for me this season. Over the summertime, I was just knocking them dead with this thing right here. I mean, this one specifically. And that trailer is the trailer, just about the only, not this one, but like I went through about 2 packs of these white trailers of the crack and crawl because they were just killing it. And I put a smaller profile on there. You can put a bigger crawl on there. It just, line it up, guys. If you're doing a big profile, use a bigger profile. If you're doing a smaller profile, use a smaller trailer. You know, that's just how that one works. Look at your size. Be rational. Look at it and be like, does that look too big? Does that look obnoxious? I mean, you can pretty much tell. You don't want the skirt like this. Like I said, this to me is too much. I didn't think about it until I really got a good look at it. In the water, it looks pretty good. But like, I think that trailer and that skirt are just a little too close together. So like, I really do like that chunk. But either I need to trim the skirt here or I need a different trailer. Because they shouldn't, to me, line up together. Like, it should just be different. You should have a little bit more action. You don't want the skirt and the claws interfering and then you're not getting any action at all. So when I was fishing this, there's no telling, there may not have been any kind of action going on in the water and the fish were just like, what is that? So, like I said, guys, just think about how you're pairing it up, the size-wise. But colors, keep it simple. It's not that hard. A lot of people like to dibble dabble and they like to try every color in the rainbow, and cool. If you want to catch fish and you really just want to start out catching fish, keep it simple, guys. People like this PB&J color, okay? If you put something like a green pumpkin kind of trailer would even look good on this. But you can do Junebug, you know, because you have purple colors in there. Or you can do, I don't know, some sort of natural color. Like I said, those watermelons, those green pumpkins, those look good on these too. As far as jig colors go, I'm all over the place. If I could really narrow it down, that's just because I'm one of those people that like to look and test all the colors and see what really works. This one's been working for me in that natural color. Natural. Something dark. Something bright.
And something white.
And something white. Now I know that's bright and white, but you know what? Those two are pretty killer together when you have it like that. But let me, you know, that's just pretty much how I do it. Like any other kind of profile, they're dark, they're falling within those profiles. natural, dark. You know, those are the profiles I fall into. I have multiple naturals and I have other kinds of darks, but those are like the generic profiles I fall into. So, figure out your waters, figure out your colors that are good for your waters. Those are what's good for mine, as far as I know, you know. And then another thing, and I did mention it, I do want to tell you guys again, because I know that I always say I'm going to cut this video short, and I'm at like 45 minutes. Holy crap. All right. Keep them if they're long and they're easier to get in the full form. Don't be against just taking a couple chunks off and making it a small trailer. But that, guys, is a long video. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I have a mess I gotta clean up. I hope you have really, really missed me. I don't know. I'm tired. It's late. I think we're pushing it. Yep, it's 10:30, and you're gonna see this tomorrow morning in like 12 hours. I have to edit and do all that fun, good stuff. Anyway, guys, like, subscribe, comment, turn on all your notifications. Be ready for videos to drop, especially if you like these kinds of videos, because these are easy. I can come and I can show you my fall ones, the ones that I like. I can do all kinds of videos in this way. I'll be out fishing. I'm going to have different styles of videos coming at you. Comment, guys. Let me know what you want to see. Anyway, guys, no complaints. You guys know how it goes. Have a good one, and I'll see you next time.